Welcome, fellow historians, to a journey beyond the known chronicles of the Imperium. We often speak of Paul Atreides, the rise of the God Emperor, and the scattering. The forgotten lore, decipher the cryptic symbols, and piece together the epic sagas that shaped humanity's destiny among the stars. Subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss our first expedition into the deep past. The spice isn't the only treasure Arrakis holds.
History remembers empires, but it forgets the moment a boy becomes a god. On Arrakis, beneath burning suns and whispering sand, a name begins to echo. Not yet a legend, not yet a prophecy fulfilled, just a survivor watching the future bleed into the present. Paul Atreides was born to a noble house, but nobility does not survive the desert. Only belief does. The spice watches him. Shai Hulud listens, and the people of the sand begin to whisper a name they barely dare to speak. Muad'Dib. This is not the story of a hero rising. It is the story of a myth being constructed, step by step, vision by vision, sacrifice by sacrifice. Because Muad'Dib was not discovered, he was made. And once belief takes root, it can no longer be controlled. In the chronicles of the Imperium, power is measured in bloodlines, armies, and ancient names. House Atreides believed this. So did the Padishah Emperor. So did the land's rod. But Arrakis teaches a harsher lesson. Here, power is not inherited. It is endured. Paul Atreides arrives as an exile, carrying the ashes of Caladan in his memory and the weight of prophecy in his veins. He is trained by the Bene Gesserit, sharpened by mentat logic, haunted by visions he does not yet understand. To the Fremen, he is a curiosity. To the Imperium, he is already dead. And to the desert itself, he is being tested. Because on Arrakis, survival becomes ritual. Ritual becomes belief. And belief, once spoken aloud, begins to reshape reality. This is the story of how a hunted boy learned to walk the sand, how whispers became worship, and how the name Muad'Dib began to eclipse Paul Atreides. But before the myth could rise, everything had to be taken from him. In the beginning, there was inheritance. House Atreides traced its authority through memory, through oceans, rain, and the disciplined honor of Caladan. A world of water, a world where power moved slowly, like tides guided by moons. Duke Leto was its living symbol, a ruler who believed loyalty could outlast fear, that justice could survive in an imperium built on cruelty. This belief made him dangerous, because the Imperium does not reward virtue, tests it until it breaks. Far above the political maps, the Padishah Emperor of House Ku-Arino watched House Atreides rise in popularity, not in armies, but in trust. And trust, within the land's rod, is more threatening than any fleet. So the trap was prepared. Arrakis, the planet of dust and death. A world whose only treasure was Melange, the substance that bent time, expanded consciousness, and made empires possible. Without it, the Imperium collapsed. With it, control became absolute. The transfer of Arrakis was presented as an honor, a promotion, but every house knew the truth. Arrakis was a blade disguised as a crown. Before House Atreides arrived, the planet had already been scarred by Harkonnen rule. Decades of exploitation. Cities built like wounds in the sand. And beneath it all, the Fremen. The Imperium dismissed them as primitives, survivors clinging to myth. But the desert had already shaped them into something else. Faith sharpened by necessity. Culture forged by extinction. And waiting, always waiting, for a sign. Paul Atreides did not yet understand this world, but the world already understood him. From childhood, he had been prepared for contradiction, trained in combat by masters of war, conditioned in perception by the Bene Gesserit, educated in logic by men tat discipline. A noble son designed to survive any court. But no school prepared him for the future invading his dreams. Visions came uninvited, fragments of sandstorms, a girl with eyes like the deep desert, a name spoken by voices he could not see. Muad'Dib. The Bene Gesserit had its own designs. For generations, they had guided bloodlines with surgical patience, seeking one outcome. The Kwisatz had Arrakis, a mind that could see where others were blind, a bridge between past and future. Atreides was not supposed to be that one, but possibility has a way of disobeying plans. Lady Jessica knew this. She felt it each time her son's awareness slipped beyond what training could explain. Each time he asked questions, she was forbidden to answer. On Arrakis, these tensions intensified. The desert stripped away illusion. It punished hesitation. Every step outside the shield wall reminded House Atreides of their fragility. And then came betrayal. The Harkonnen returned not as rulers, but as executioners. With Sardaukar disguised in foreign colors, the emperors will descended like nightfall. Duke Leto fell, not as a failure, but as a warning. In a single night, honor was erased by efficiency. The palace burned, allies vanished, and House Atreides was reduced to rumor. Atreides and Lady Jessica fled into the open desert, unarmored, hunted, and unprepared for what survival would demand. This was the moment history later pretended was inevitable. But standing in the sand, listening to the wind erase footprints, nothing felt destined. Only loss. The desert does not care about lineage. It does not respect titles. It measures worth by endurance alone. Here, Atreides was no longer a duke's son. He was prey. And yet, the visions sharpened. He saw paths branching endlessly, some ending in extinction, others in fire that consumed the galaxy. Each choice is heavy with consequence. Each step is a commitment. When the Fremen finally emerged from the dunes, they did not see a prince. They saw a boy who had survived the open sand. A boy who listened before speaking, who moved with caution and awareness. Stilgar watched him carefully. Chani studied him in silence. And the desert listened, because Arrakis had seen outsiders before. Conquerors, exploiters, false saviors. But this one walked as if the sand already knew his name. This was not yet belief, not yet worship, only curiosity. But on Arrakis, curiosity is dangerous. Because once a story begins to form, the desert never lets it end. Survival is never neutral. On Arrakis, it always demands transformation. The Fremen did not welcome Atreides with open arms. They tested him, measured his silence, watched how he conserved water, how his footsteps learned the rhythm of the sand. Because among the Fremen, belief is not given. It is earned in scarcity. Atreides adapted quickly. Too quickly. He learned the still suit not as clothing, but as a second skin. He learned to walk without calling Shai Hulud. He learned that water was memory, and that every death was counted. But what unsettled the Fremen was not his skill. It was his awareness. He spoke of places he had never seen. He recognized signs before they were explained. He looked at the desert not as an enemy, but as a language. And slowly, whispers returned. Lisan el-Gaib, a name seeded long before his birth. A prophecy planted by the Bene Gesserit Missionaria Protectiva, designed as a survival tool for their own. A myth meant to manipulate desperate populations. But myths do not remain obedient. Atreides understood the danger immediately. He saw it in his visions. Crowds chanting his name, banners raised in blood and fire, the galaxy drowning beneath religious war. He tried to resist, because to accept the name Muad'Dib was to surrender control, to step onto a path that narrowed with every step. Yet refusal was also a choice. And that choice carried its own endings. The Fremen lived between necessity and faith. They needed a leader, someone who could unite the Sietch and the tribe against the Harkonnen yoke, someone who could turn survival into vengeance. Paul Atreides became that figure not through declaration, but through action. He fought beside them, bled beside them, killed for the first time with a weight that never left his eyes. When Jamies fell, the desert took note. Paul Atreides wept for the man he killed, and the Fremen watched in silence, because only someone who understood the cost of death could be trusted with power. From that moment, the balance shifted. Training became indoctrination, ritual became recognition, and Paul Atreides began to see himself reflected in their expectations. The spice intensified everything. Melange sharpened his prescient sight until the future pressed against the present like a tightening vice. He saw possibilities collapsing into inevitabilities. He saw that every attempt to avoid the holy war only seemed to make it stronger. And then came the water of life, the substance no man was meant to survive. To drink it was to gamble with annihilation. To change it was to claim authority over death itself. Paul Atreides hesitated, not from fear of dying, but from fear of what would remain, because he had already seen the outcome. If he survived, he would no longer belong to himself. He would become a symbol larger than his own conscience, a god who could not step down. And yet, if he refused, the future collapsed into darker shapes. So he drank, and the boy who had fled into the desert dissolved. What returned was awareness without refuge. Paul Atreides crossed where even the Bene Gesserit could not follow. He saw through generations, through lies hidden in bloodlines, through the fragile architecture of the Imperium itself. The Kwisatz Haderach was no longer theoretical. He stood among the Fremen changed, his voice carrying a resonance that demanded attention. Not loud, certain. The name Muad'Dib was no longer whispered. It was spoken openly, carved into belief. Under his leadership, the Fremen ceased to be a scattered people. They became a force. Sietches coordinated. Spice production faltered. Harkonnen patrols vanished into the sand. And fear returned to DD Prime. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen had ruled through terror all his life. But terror requires visibility. An enemy you can see. Muad'Dib was something else. A shadow. A rumor. A god moving faster than intelligence reports. The Sardaukar fell first. Elite soldiers of the Padishah Emperor, trained from childhood to be unbreakable, were swallowed by a people the Imperium had dismissed as myth. And for the first time in generations, the Corino throne trembled. Paul Atreides knew what this meant. He had seen the branching futures collapse into fewer and fewer paths. He understood that victory on Arrakis would force the Imperium to respond. That confrontation was inevitable. And still, he moved forward. Because by now, the myth was no longer something he could control. The Fremen did not follow him because he commanded them. They followed because they believed. And belief is the most dangerous force in history. As the final confrontation approached, Paul Atreides stood at the edge of destiny, fully aware of the cost. He could see the jihad spreading outward like wildfire, planets burning in his name, millions dying while chanting Muad'Dib as salvation. And yet, he also saw stagnation without him, endless oppression, humanity trapped in smaller, quieter extinctions. The central conflict was no longer political. It was existential. Was it better to become a god and damn the future, or remain human and allow the Imperium to rot forever? There was no clean choice, only outcomes weighted by blood. When the storm finally broke, when Shai Hulud rose and the desert itself seemed to answer his call, the galaxy crossed a threshold it could never retreat from. Paul Atreides stepped fully into the role history demanded, not because he desired it, but because every other path had already closed. And as the banners rose and the Emperor was forced to kneel, one truth became unavoidable. Muad'Dib was no longer becoming a myth. He was the myth. And myths do not ask permission before they reshape the universe. Every civilization eventually invents a god. Not because it wants to worship, but it wants to escape responsibility. In the archives of the Imperium, Historians would later argue over Paul Atreides. Was he a liberator shaped by circumstance? Or a tyrant wearing the mask of destiny? But these questions miss the deeper truth. Muad'Dib was not an accident. He was the logical outcome of systems designed to control humanity through fear, scarcity, and myth. The Bene Gesserit believed they could engineer salvation, that bloodlines could be guided like equations, that prophecy could be deployed as a tool and discarded when no longer useful. But prophecy is not inert. Once released into human imagination, it becomes alive. Paul Atreides inherited more than genetic potential. He inherited centuries of manipulation layered so thick they resembled fate itself. And Arrakis was the crucible that made the illusion permanent. The desert stripped choice down to essentials: water, survival, meaning. In such conditions, myth is not superstition. It is a psychological infrastructure. The Fremen did not worship Muad'Dib because he was powerful. They worshipped him because he confirmed their suffering had purpose. This is the oldest pattern in human history. When people endure unimaginable hardship, they do not ask for comfort. They ask for justification. Muad'Dib provided that justification with terrifying precision. His prescience removed uncertainty. His certainty removed doubt. And doubt is the final refuge of moral restraint. Here lies the true danger of godhood. Paul Atreides could see the future, but seeing the future does not grant the right to own it. The more clearly he perceived inevitability, the less space remained for choice, both his own and everyone else's. Freedom collapsed into optimization. Every action became calculated. Every sacrifice became acceptable because it led toward a vision already sanctified by foresight. In this way, Muad'Dib represents the ultimate paradox of control. A man who knows the future cannot allow it to change. And in preventing chaos, he becomes its most efficient instrument. The Imperium had long depended on stagnation. The Padishah Emperor ruled not through innovation, but through preservation. The land's rod maintained balance by freezing history in place. Paul Atreides shattered this equilibrium, but what replaced it was not freedom. It was acceleration, a universe driven forward by religious certainty rather than political compromise. Here, Frank Herbert's warning becomes clear. The most dangerous leader is not the cruel tyrant. It is the righteous savior. Because tyrants can be resisted, gods cannot. Muad'Dib's jihad was not a failure of character. It was a failure of structure. A galaxy that concentrates power, belief, and destiny into a single figure inevitably invites catastrophe. The Fremen believed they were choosing liberation. In reality, they were surrendering agency. And Paul Atreides, despite his awareness, allowed it. Because even he could not escape the momentum of belief once it began to move. This is the machine beneath the myth. Humanity constructs symbols. Symbols concentrate emotion. Emotion overrides reason. And once reason is eclipsed, violence becomes sacred. Muad'Dib did not create fanaticism. He revealed how easily it forms when suffering meets certainty. This is why his story remains unsettling. Not because he failed to stop the jihad, but because he understood it and still could not dismantle it without destroying himself. In this sense, Muad'Dib is both God and prisoner, a creator trapped by his own creation, a machine built to guide humanity, and consumed by the very logic that made him necessary. The desert did not crown him because he was virtuous. It crowned him because he was inevitable. And inevitability is the most seductive lie of all. Because once people believe history must unfold a certain way, they stop asking whether it should. That is the true legacy of Muad'Dib. Not an empire, not conquest, but a warning etched into myth itself. That is the moment humanity stops questioning its saviors, is the moment it surrenders its soul. In the end, the desert keeps no monuments, only echoes. Paul Atreides began as a son of Caladan, a boy shaped by water, discipline, and inherited duty. But Arrakis reshaped him into something older than empire and more dangerous than tyranny. Muad'Dib rose because the universe needed him to rise. Because systems built on stagnation eventually demand rupture. Because people crushed by history will always reach for myth. And yet, what began as survival became worship. What became worship became war. The tragedy is not that Paul Atreides became a god. It is that humanity asked him to be one. The sand still remembers his footsteps. The spice still carries his vision. And the future still trembles beneath the weight of belief. Because history does not end with heroes. It repeats through them. And somewhere, beneath endless suns, the desert whispers a final truth. The most dangerous myths are not the ones that lie, but the ones that make themselves unavoidable.